Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am finally here to do my May wrap up. I am so excited to finally film this video, and you might be able to tell, but I am also filming a get ready with me style wrap up, so I will be doing my makeup while talking about all the books that I read in May. So I read a total of 25 books throughout the month. I wasn't able to do a mid-month wrap up or anything because I got sick around May 13th. Had strep throat, completely lost my voice. My voice is only just now coming back to being like 100% back. And then also I do want to point out, I am not talking about all 25 books in this video. Sorry if that's a disappointment to any of you, but you can definitely check out my Goodreads. I always have all of that linked down below. If you want to see all of the reviews of all of the books that I read in May. Basically, I decided for this month to not talk about the books that I gave less than 4 stars. I didn't give any books like 1 or 2 stars, so I don't really have any rant reviews. But I don't feel like talking about the books that were just 3 stars, you know, that were just meh for me. So I'm going to be talking about basically just like all of the notable books that I read throughout the month. Also, just want to point out, I did do my foundation and concealer already. I guess I'll take off my glasses. You might be able to see I actually put some white concealer on my eyelids because we are doing a really fun and really colorful look using the What Dreams Are Made Of palette by Colourpop. This is their Lizzie McGuire collection. This is what the back of the palette looks like, and here is what we have going on. There's the camera. But I love this color palette. I feel like this is perfect for summer. Kind of gives me a Pride vibe as well because it's like most of the rainbow going on. So yeah, I thought it would be fun to do like a really colorful look for my first get ready with me style wrap up in a while. Like I haven't done one of these since, I want to say at some point in March. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just dive on into it. So the first book I want to talk about is The Wedding Wager by Eva Devon. This is my second book that I have now read by this author. And I think just like I read The Spinster and the Rake by this author, gave that one 4.5 stars. And I think I gave this one 4.5 stars as well. Yes, so this one is about Derek and Victoria. This is a very interesting marriage of convenience because basically the very beginning of the book, our hero Derek, I believe he's a duke. He is at this gambling den, and Victoria, our heroine's father, is literally gambling away her hand in marriage to this like awful dude. So Derek steps in and he's like, enough of this foolishness. I am going to marry your daughter. And so yeah, that's the very basic setup of this book, is that it's a marriage of convenience between Derek and Victoria. Just like with The Spinster and the Rake, I feel like Eva Devon's writing is just like compulsively readable. I had no problem reading this book in just a few hours. I had a really good time with it. I made note that I really enjoyed Derek's character arc, and he did a really great grand gesture at the end. So this was my very first book that I read in May. So I don't remember what that grand gesture was anymore, but obviously it was notable enough for me to make note of it in my Goodreads review. So there you go. Clearly, once I'm done reading a book, I forget most of what happened. But yeah, I do recommend this one. This one is a standalone. I'm pretty sure it's not a part of her recent series or anything like that. I think the next book in her series that The Spinster and the Rake is a part of, I believe that's coming out in August, and I'm so excited for that book. Next up, we're gonna have a lot of historical romances in this wrap up, and nobody is surprised. I have gotten to the point where at least like 70% of what I read is historical romances, so that's where we are. But next we have The Duke's Perfect Wife by Jennifer Ashley. This is book 4 in her Mackenzie McBride series, which is a historical romance series that I have really been enjoying. And I was really excited about this book because we're finally getting Hart's story, who is the eldest of the Mackenzie brothers. He's also the most mysterious as well, and this is a second chance romance between him and Eleanor. They fell in love when they were probably in their like early 20s, and now they're maybe in their early to mid 30s or something like that. And Hart has quite the tragic past. He was married, I want to say, when he was in his 20s. His wife and his infant child both passed away. I did really like this. I didn't love it quite as much as I was expecting to. I feel like the plot kind of went into odd directions, especially towards the end. I still gave this 4 stars. I really liked that we got to see a lot of the other Mackenzies. I adore books 1 and 2 of this series, which is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie and Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage. I think Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage is absolutely my favorite of the 4 books. I adore that book with my whole heart. I don't think I'm necessarily gonna continue on with the series, but I'm glad that I read these 4 books. Next up, we have a contemporary romance. This is Drive Me Wild by Melanie Harlow. This is my first book that I have ever read by this author, and it certainly will not be the last. I had a really good time with this one. This is book 1 in her Bellamy Creek series. I was turned on to this book by Madison from Princess of Paperbacks because she compared this to It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. She just said that there were like similar vibes. This takes place in a small town and our heroine is a fish out of water, just like in It Happened One Summer. So this book is about, let me see, what are the characters' names? Griffin and Blair. Griffin is a car mechanic. Blair, this is like the best meet cute ever. Blair literally like crashes her car near where Griffin and his friends are sitting. I believe they're like at a diner or something. She comes out of the car in this ginormous debutante gown. Think like a huge white dress. At least that's how I imagined it to be. And she just like goes up to Griffin and his friends and she's like, I need help. And things go on from there. Something that I really appreciated about this book is how like surprisingly sexy it was. I feel like a lot of times with small town romances, I mean, they'll be sexy enough, but like this book went there. I was pleasantly surprised. There was even a bit of kink going on, a bit of role playing, a bit of dirty talk. Like, it was great. I had a good time with it. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely going to continue on with the series, and I also really want to check out her, like, what is it, Cloverleaf Farms? There's another series by her that I definitely will check out at some point. The Devil is a Marquis by Elisa Braden. This is book 4 in her Rescued from Ruin series. I have really been enjoying this historical romance series, and I had heard from so many people like this book is truly a fan favorite of the series. I think this is a lot of people's absolute favorite book of the series. So this one centers around Benedict Chatham, who is a Viscount, but the Viscountcy is broke. He desperately needs to find an heiress to marry to help his estate. Then there is Charlotte, our heroine. She's had a few seasons in London, but nothing's really worked out in terms of like suitors or anything like that. She seems to be like unfashionably tall and clumsy, but her father is very wealthy, and he is willing to trade her dowry for a title. So Benedict is kind of like the perfect candidate to go into this marriage of convenience with Charlotte, because he, right, like I said, he desperately needs money, and he's kind of a wastrel. Like, he kind of doesn't want to go on living anymore. He's just, you know, drinking all the time. I feel like he's just kind of at this point where he doesn't really care about anything. And so then when Charlotte's father you know, comes to him with this proposal of marrying Charlotte, he'll get all this money. They make like a formal deal of like, if you stay married to her, I think it's like if you stay married for at least a year and you don't cheat on her and you don't drink, or gamble or something, you'll get like 100,000 pounds, like a ton of money, especially back then. And so Charlotte at first is like, no, because I feel like she's not really keen on marriage in general, but especially not someone with Benedict's reputation. And I forget why she agrees to it. I can't remember. But they do have like insane chemistry from the moment that they meet, even though like Charlotte kind of hates him. And so yeah, they go into this marriage of convenience. They go back to his estate, but it's like in ruins, like it's in terrible, terrible shape. And so they kind of start bonding through, you know, putting this estate back together. I can see why people compare this to Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. I do think that Benedict gives Sebastian vibes, except that Benedict isn't nearly as much of like a villain as Sebastian is. He's just more like a wastrel, like I said. He just doesn't really care about anything. And then Charlotte does kind of remind me of Evie from Devil in Winter as well. Yeah, the way that she wrote Benedict's character arc is, it was so well done. Like some of the best character writing that I have ever read about. And like I said, Charlotte and Benedict have insane chemistry together. There's some really great steamy scenes in this. Like, what's not to love? This is a fantastic book. I don't think you absolutely need to read the first 3 books in the series to enjoy this book, but it would be nice if you did. But yeah, I can't wait to continue on with this series. Elisa Braden is quickly becoming a new favorite author of mine. Yeah, I'm just loving this series. So then we're getting into some mafia romances. So around like May 5th, there was a round of the mafia romance readathon. So the first book that I read for that was Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. This is book 4. I'm reading a lot of book 4s, I just realized. Book 4 in her Brutal Birthright series. This story centers around Dante, who was one of the Gallows. Basically, if you know nothing about this series, it centers around 2 different mafia families. We have the Gallows, which are an Italian mafia family, and we have the Griffins, which are an Irish mafia family. And so in this book, Dante, I want to say Dante is the eldest of the Gallows siblings. I'm pretty sure I'm right in that. And so this is a second chance romance, very angsty, takes place over the course of quite a few years as well. But we see that when he's about like 19, I want to say, something like that, he meets this girl Simone, and they fall head over heels in love with each other very quickly, very insta-lovey, very intense, just beautiful. God, I am just obsessed with Sophie Lark's writing. Then they essentially get separated for 9 years. So we see over those 9 years, Simone becomes a famous model, actually, and she became pregnant way back when from Dante, and so she's been taking care of their son. Dante obviously has no clue that he's a father because they haven't seen each other in 9 years. So yeah, we have 9 years later, present day, they cross paths again and things go on from there. I just thought this was beautifully written. God, so angsty, heart-wrenching at times because of the circumstances that led to them being separated for so long in the first place. And there's also some really great action scenes and a really interesting mystery going on. I feel like that's pretty common in Sophie Lark's books, that like she'll just throw in this like really interesting mystery. Like I definitely found that to be the case with the next book in this series, which is Broken Vow. But yeah, there's some like really intense action scenes towards the end. I love this. I gave it 5 stars. This series definitely has been a little bit hit or miss for me, but I still just like love this series, love these characters so freaking much, and just can't recommend it highly enough. I feel like this would also be a good series to read if you are someone that is trying out mafia romance for the first time, just because these books kind of read more, some of them read more like mafia adjacent than anything else, so maybe this might be a good, and it's just fantastic romances, fantastic characters and everything. So yeah, this might be a good series for you to like dip your toe into the genre. So let's move on from that. I could go on and on and on about Sophie Lark's books. Next we have Run Posey Run by Cate C. This is definitely a really interesting and unique romance for sure. It's a very unique dark mafia romance. So this is about Dario, who is basically like the money man in the Italian mafia, and then we have Posey, who has been his girlfriend for quite a while, it sounds like. I mean, at least a few months, maybe even a few years, something like that. Basically, he thinks that she cheated on him and betrayed him in a huge way, and so he is very, very, very cruel to her. She has nowhere to go, but she starts to run because he basically threatens her life. I can't remember how exactly that whole conversation went, but yeah, she is scared shitless, and so she's running from him. Basically, he realizes that she didn't cheat on him, and so he goes after her, and he will do anything to have her. He kidnaps her. There is a lot going on in this book for sure. I will admit, so I gave this 4 stars. I know a lot of people who gave this 5 stars. While this is a very unique romance, I think there were also some really, really great discussions that Dario and Posey had about their relationship with one another, but at the same time there were definitely quite a few things that made me feel very uncomfy while reading this. I mean, there is a scene where Dario like almost rapes Posey. He also throws her into the trunk of his car when he kidnaps her. I mean, this is definitely like a sociopath, psychopath romance, you know, and maybe those aren't for me. I mean, I will say I was entertained the whole time just because of how ridiculous Dario is. Like, he's insane. So like, do I recommend it? Yeah, like, especially if you're into dark romances, and it's certainly, like I said, it will give you a very unique reading experience. Like, it certainly was was something. I don't know what else to say about this book. Now we are moving on into the historical romance read-a-thon. I am so excited to talk about these books. I did do a vlog for this. I will of course link that up in the cards above. But the first book that I read for that read-a-thon was Nobody's Duke by Scarlett Scott. This is my first book that I have read by this author. It definitely won't be my last because it's easily one of my favorite books that I read in May. This is also book 1 in a series. It's the League of Dukes series, I believe is what the series is called. And this is an angsty second chance historical romance that will definitely give you vibes of Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas, which is one of my favorite historical romances of all time. I was turned on to this book by Ava from Ava Reads Romance, and when she made that same comparison about like Again the Magic, I knew that I needed to read this book. By the way, this whole series, all of Scarlett Scott's books are on Kindle Unlimited. This is about Clay and Era. Her full name is Araminta, but she goes by Era throughout the book. So similar to Again the Magic, they fall in love when they're like 18-ish years old, something like that. They make plans to run away together and get married, you know, just have a life together. But I want to say it's Era's family basically intervenes to the point where Era shows up at their meeting point, but Clay never does. And so she moves on with her life. She actually eventually ends up marrying this guy who's a duke, who's a very nice man. But she goes on living her life thinking that he just never showed up and he just betrayed her. Meanwhile, he thinks that she betrayed him because I think he's on his way to meet her at the meeting point when he gets like severely beaten up and is told that Era would never want to marry him. I think that's what happens. So basically, bottom line of all of that is that they both think that the other betrayed them, and so now they are hurt, they are very angry. It's 8 years later. Now the Duke, Era's husband, he ends up getting murdered by this radical Irish group. And so Clay, ever since this whole betrayal thing happened, he kind of became like this elite soldier type person. And so now he ends up becoming Era's bodyguard because the government is convinced that since they this group went through all that effort to kill the Duke, that they're gonna want to kill the Duchess as well. And so Clay is forced into being her bodyguard. And so this is like, it's a second chance hate to love romance. They both like hate each other's guts once again because they think that the other betrayed them, right? I did not need to go into all of that. I just realized because this was a part of my vlog, but anyways, that should tell you how much I love this book. It's just beautifully, beautifully written, great steamy scenes. I just adored the characters, really made me feel all the feels. Yeah, like I said, if you want to know more thoughts, check out the vlog, but I feel like I've given you a lot of my thoughts in this video. I want to talk about Third Sons of Charm. This is by Shanna Galen. I gave this one 4 stars. This one is about Ewan and Laurie. This is also another bodyguard romance. And it's got some Grumpy Sunshine vibes. I really like that there was a side plot that involved Laurie's parents that was like a marriage in trouble storyline. Like, we love that. Sorry, by the way, if I keep putting the mirror in front of my face. I am terrible at doing my makeup on camera. But yeah, this was solid. The last like 30% or so really dragged, so that's why I ended up giving it 4 stars. But I do think I'm gonna read more of the books of the series because I really liked the side characters. Let's see, next up for that readathon I read Scandalous Passions by Nicola Davidson. This is an FFM poly Scottish medieval historical romance. I gave this one 4 stars. The audiobook for this is on Hoopla if you are interested, which is really exciting to see that Nicola Davidson is starting to have audiobooks made of her books. This was really solid, gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed some of the representation that we had going on in the story because we had a femdom, a hero with a stutter, and then the other heroine was plus sized. So yeah, not my favorite Nicola Davidson, but still a good time. Next, I read To Covet a Countess by Sapna Bog. This is book 2 in her, shoot, I can't remember the series, but the first book was Dare to be a Duchess. I absolutely adored that book. I gave that one 5 stars. This one I really enjoyed as well. I gave it 4 stars. This is a really sweet kind of insta-lovey romance between our main characters, Nicholas and then Sonia, who is the cousin to the heroine from book 1. And what was really interesting about this story is that it kind of went in a very interesting direction. Like, there's kind of a plot twist going on. Like, I was really pleasantly surprised by that. So next up we have Love in the Afternoon by Lisa Kleypas. This is the 5th and final book in her Hathaway series, and I ended up giving this 4.5 stars simply because for me the pacing was kind of slow in the second half, but I still definitely really enjoyed this romance. I love Beatrix's characters. I love all of the Hathaways. I really ended up enjoying this romance between her and Christopher. This kind of starts out as an epistolary romance. And oh my god, there's this really cute dog, Albert, that's featured throughout the book. And yeah, I definitely talked about the plot a lot more in my vlog if you're interested. So next up I read Magnate by Joanna Shupe, as you can see over here. Once again, thank you so much to Joanna Shupe herself for sending me a copy of this book. I somewhat recently did an interview with her on Jess's channel. I'll link that down in the description below. And she said that this is one of the books that she is the most proud of, and she said that it has like literally all of the elements that she loves about Gilded Age romance. And after reading this, I can definitely see how she was inspired by Lions and Lace by Megan McKinney. That is a book that she herself has said is one of her favorite books of all time, and I read that book maybe at some point last year, and while I hated the hero in that book, I definitely see like why it was such an inspiration to her. And so this book is, it's book 1 in her Knickerbocker Club series. This is about Emmett, our hero, and Lizzie, our heroine. And Lizzie has a really interesting career that she wants to get into. That's one of the things that I love about Joanna Shupe's characters, is that they tend to have like really interesting careers or like hobbies or things like that. And so Lizzie wants to start her own stock brokerage firm. Like, she is incredible at playing the stock exchange. Like, she just has a talent for it. And so Emmett is kind of her last chance at getting an investor, because, you know, she's a woman. This is taking place in the 1890s, so no one is willing to invest in her. But she ends up going to Emmett, and Emmett is a friend of her brother's. They're not like best friends by any means, but they're like close enough friends that I think that's one of the reasons why Emmett is a little hesitant to invest in her business. And so they kind of come up with this deal. He gives her like a sum of money, and he's like, if you can double it basically within this time period, I'll invest in your company. And so things go on from there. This turns into a marriage of convenience, and I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I will admit that there is quite a bit of miscommunication going on, but I somehow didn't mind. Like, usually that really annoys me in romance novels, because I really would just rather my 2 main characters talk. But yeah, I didn't mind. I thought the pacing and the writing was really well done. There's some really great steamy scenes, especially like their first steamy scene happens when they get stuck at the office during a snowstorm, and yeah, it is a good time. I definitely recommend this, and I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the series at some point. Next up, we have Regarding the Duke by Grace Calloway. This is technically book 3 in a series by her, but you can definitely read it as a standalone. I read it as a standalone, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything by any means. But this one has some interesting tropes, because it has the amnesia trope and the marriage in trouble trope. We have our 2 main characters, Gabriella and Adam. They've been married for like 8 years. They have a couple of kids at this point. But basically, Adam kind of deals in like the underbelly of London. And so he's actually out for revenge against his biological father. And so yeah, some people like severely beat him up and I think leave him for dead, but he somehow survives, and he wakes up not remembering like a lot of his life, I want to say, like at least the last few years. So he doesn't remember his wife and his children, and so they are building their relationship from ground zero. And that's how Gabriella learns that Adam is not the man that she thought that he was, and because Adam's definitely been keeping her at arm's length like their entire marriage. And so yeah, I really loved this. Grace Calloway, she really brings it with the steamy scenes. This was a hot book. Adam is just like a really hot, morally gray hero. And what else did I say? I love the revenge plot. We also have a plus size heroine, and I already mentioned this, but this book was hot, so I recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. I'm definitely going to read more from Grace Calloway, because I've heard some pretty great things about a lot of her other books. Next up, we have Texas Destiny by Lorraine Heath. I read this for the Historical Hellions book club that is run by Jess and Samantha. I will link the live show that we did down in the description below. I was a guest host, which was really, really fun. So this is book 1 in a Western historical romance series by Lorraine Heath. And this series centers around these 3 brothers who are named Houston, Dallas, and Austin. Yes, they live in Texas. It's actually kind of funny because their names are addressed by our hero Houston. He says that basically their parents were kind of lazy and they just named them after the city in which they were born. And so this is about a mail order bride. We have Amelia, and because she is betrothed to Dallas, yes, who is Houston's older brother, but Dallas broke his foot or broke his leg or something, so he's unable to retrieve her himself, and so he sends Houston to do it. Houston is a very grumpy, scarred hero from the war. He served in the Civil War on the Confederate side, which is a little bit yikes, but to be fair, he was forced into it by his father. But yeah, I really don't have much to say about this book. I gave it 4 stars. The pacing is slow. I can definitely understand why some people DNF'd this book, some people hated this book maybe, or you know, whatever. There's definitely maybe some emotional cheating going on, considering that Amelia is betrothed to Dallas, and she's falling for Houston. And yeah, but I enjoyed this. I'm definitely going to check out the other 2 books in the series, just because I really liked the family dynamic. I really liked the 3 brothers, especially Austin, who is the youngest of the 3 brothers. Oh, next up I have 2 Sarah J Maas books to like briefly talk about. I will talk about Heir of Fire first. So this is book 3 in the Throne of Glass series. This is one of the books that we read for May as a part of the SJM along. That is a Sarah J Maas read along that Jen from the Book Refuge has put together. So I'll actually link below the live show that we did discussing Heir of Fire, because I was a guest host on that and I had a really good time discussing this book. I loved rereading this for the first time, because the first time that I read this book I gave it like 4.5 stars, and upon reread I bumped up my rating to 5 stars. This is just such a fantastic installment to the series. Really expands the world. Selena, our main character, her character arc is everything. This is where we first meet Rowan, and Rowan is like a book husband for me at this point. So yeah, I just had a really good time with this one. Once again, check out that live show if you want to know more in-depth thoughts. And then another book that we read for SJM along is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. So this is book 1 in her A Court of Thorns and Roses series, of course. And so this was my first time rereading this book as well, and I reread it via the brand new graphic audiobook. And oh my god, that audiobook, you guys, literally one of the best audiobooks that I have ever listened to. Okay, I am done with the makeup look. So I'm really happy with how this eyeshadow turned out. I hope that you guys enjoy it too. But yeah, this audiobook was absolutely fantastic. Oh my god. The voice actors were amazing. The production value was incredible, because there's sound effects, music, like you really do feel like you're listening to a movie. And I just cannot wait to reread the rest of the series through these graphic audiobooks. By the way, I found them on Hoopla. I have In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. So this book I did give less than 4 stars, but I did want to review it in this video because I just have like a little bit of a rant. I gave this like 3.5 stars, and it's about 7 main characters who become really close friends in college. Their senior year, one of them ends up getting murdered, and one of the other friends basically gets framed for said murder. All of these friends reunite for the 10-year college reunion, and the brother of the girl who was murdered is interrogating all of them, because he's like, I know one of you killed her, and we are gonna find out who it was. So here's the thing. The pacing was really well done. I was definitely engaged the entire time, but none of the characters had like any depth to them. They weren't interesting characters. Here's the thing about thrillers. You usually have a bunch of unlikable characters, and you need them to be interesting and to have that depth, because if they're both unlikable and not interesting, then like, why am I reading this book, you know? And really, I think it was because the pacing was so well done. But yeah, so that was my main problem. And also the ending left a really bad taste in my mouth, because one of the major characters basically got away with doing something horrible when all of the other characters that did bad things, like, they got what was coming to them, you know, but this one major character got away with doing something really terrible, and I was like, I hate everything now. So yeah, I needed to bring that book up. Last but certainly not least, I have 2 incredible new release historical romances that I read at the very end of the month that I absolutely adored. I did a reading vlog, I'm gonna link that up in the cards above, where I read 3 historical romances that came out on May 24th, and this is 2 of them. So the first one is A Daring Pursuit by Kate Bateman. This is book 2 in her Ruthless Rivals series. This one is about Karis and Tristan. This series centers around the Davies and the Montgomerys, which are 2 feuding families, kind of like, you know, Romeo and Juliet going on, but more entertaining, not that serious. And this is an enemies with benefits situation. Definitely check out my vlog because I discussed these books in detail, but I loved this so much. This is probably my favorite Kate Bateman book that I've read so far. Then, last but certainly not least for May, I read The Bride Goes Rogue by Joanna Shupe, book 3 in her Fifth Avenue Rebels series. Stunning cover. I am obsessed with Joanna Shupe's covers. No one is surprised that I gave this 5 stars as well. This is, in my opinion, Joanna Shupe's hottest book. Oh my goodness, the steamy scenes in this book were just next level. It's about Preston and Catherine. Their fathers arranged for them to be married at some point to form an alliance between the 2 families. But Preston's father passes away, and so Preston never really took this betrothal seriously. So Catherine shows up at his office and she's like, hey, let's make wedding plans. Like, what's happening? When are we getting married? And Preston's like, I'm not marrying anyone. I'm not marrying you. Okay, thanks, bye. Catherine gets pissed, so it becomes this hate to love situation, and it is fantastic. I still think The Lady Gets Lucky is my absolute favorite Joanna Shupe book, but this one came pretty darn close. I absolutely loved it. So that is going to be it for my May wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed this makeup look that I did. I'm getting ready to go film my June TBR video. So yeah, definitely leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this video, if you want to give me recommendations, anything like that. Thank you so much for watching. I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!